I'm just going to wrap up in around the remaining 10 minutes just to talk about a couple trends that I think are really interesting that we all should be aware of. And if you're not, give your head a shake and we should get into that. But I think they're really interesting areas. One that I think we all definitely have a lot of interest in is the rise of the creative citizen consumer. I mean, you talk the notion of memes and the way they work and perpetuate themselves and promulgate themselves on the internet is a universal theme for all of us, but it's becoming a very mainstream theme, and I think that's really important for us to understand, that we're not just talking to ourselves anymore, we're talking to the entire vox populi of young people these days. And I'll call attention to this one stat up here. If you aggregate all the actual participation in art, the actual creation of art, you put that down, people that are actually doing poetry, kids aside from Facebook that are actually doing their own blog or putting up their own photos or being in a band or DJing, it adds up to 15%. So 1 in 6 young Canadians now are directly and actively involved in the creation of art. And that's a number that's never been hit before since the history of the world, which would be the history of StatsCan. There you go. And we see it everywhere. Red Bull, the Music Academy, all that kind of stuff, just getting involved with that. They understand it. I think it's really, really important. I think the big point here is that these cues and many others paint a picture of a young citizen consumer who's more engaged in and more discerning of cultural output than any previous generation was. And they expect the organizations and the brands and the icons and anything else that they let into their lives to follow suit. So basically, we all have to up our game, and we all have to get them involved in what's going on with the memes that are out there and anything else, or it's just not going to happen. And you can auto-tune anything you want. Another thing that I'd like to talk about too is this notion of the commoditization of experience. I talked about it a bit earlier, but this is really, really important for us to understand. When you're talking about marketing, especially in the new digital world, everyone always seems to go directly to, it's 2.0, 3.0, and yeah, these are all areas you have to play in. But I think it's very, very important for us not to lose sight of the ball and know that at the end of the day, human relationships are at the crux of everything that's important to all of us, in particular young Canadians. They're growing up, they're trying to socialize themselves, and there has been a real shift actually to an enlarging presence of a real visceral connection with whatever it is that you're doing. Up here, the stat I have is that 51% of 14 to 34-year-olds typically save for a vacation or special occasion. So what? Well, what's really interesting about that is when you compare it to everything else that they save up for, it's way higher than technology purchases at 30%. Rent and food and other basics is only 30%. So, geez. And then saving up for a car, which used to be the symbol even 6 years ago in North America and around 10 years ago in Canada. That was the symbol of the one thing you saved up for. It's now down at 20%. While 51% are saving for a vacation or a special occasion. So basically, young Canadians today put an unprecedented amount of focus on and effort towards the procurement of experiences, all documented assiduously the moment it's happening on Facebook and any other social media pieces that are happening. But it's a very, very important thing for us to understand. New marketing, new communication is out there in the virtual world, which isn't the virtual world anymore, but I can discuss that over drinks with you at some point. It's a real world. But it also takes place where flesh and blood combine more so than any other time. So you really have to start, when you're thinking about new marketing and integrated marketing approaches, shaking hands and kissing babies is right up there and part and parcel of the new modern zeitgeist. It's really, really important. Another thing that I like to bring up is this idea of the death of binary culture. This is an age now of the death of right and wrong, the death of black and white, with the diversity of opinion that's out there now, and information heretofore unimaginable. There's no such thing as one opinion anymore, and that's valid. There's huge moral imperatives linked to that, and huge discussions that we can have on that. But I just think it's very important for everyone to understand that young Canadians now question every effing thing that is thrown on their plate, every single thing. Be it a location place on a map to, why does God exist and whatever, or do I need to eat my greens? And this sort of brings me back, and I'll finish with this piece, is what I call the Marty McFly effect. It's something if you're like me, and I think a lot of you people are, you've been in this world for a long time, studying cultural context or creating within it, and there's always new things up there, and we all get excited. But there reaches a point sometimes where you start the further you go down that rabbit hole, the more you start realizing that a lot of this has happened before. It's just permeating itself in different ways. It's like the question is still the same, but we're just sort of trying to answer it in different ways, and I think that's important. I always use this stat up here. 43% of Canadians like it when a television show has a single sponsor, and there are almost no ads except for the sponsor. That's from the 50s. That's like Brill Cream or Shino or whatever else. That's really interesting. And you look at all the trends that are happening right now that we consider modern, that they write about in blogs. Getting to know the farmer who made you the butter, that's modern now. Old Farmer O'Leary and his cow, that's real modern stuff, people. Wanting a real relationship with your salesperson. Big thing that we're doing right now with a lot of our telco customers is honing in on their customer relationship experience. It's about real people that they can trust in the actual stores. It's about having phalanx of younger people who actually, can swear or whatever online to actually, talk to you and walk you through your problem. It's funny, but this is what happened. Shaking hands and kissing babies, ask Obama. That did pretty well for him. So I think I'm just going to leave you with that. What I wanted to do here is hit you with sort of just the stats and where things are going, and hopefully you're shaking your heads at some of those stats, because I don't think the penetration, particularly with mobile, is where we may think in our worlds where it is. All my friends are on, but actually young people haven't really adopted that for a variety of different reasons. Online is huge. It's where they breathe. I also like to hammer home the point that they're looking at brands and organizations and ways that you communicate with them in an entirely different way. They expect participation. They expect interactivity. And that's not just like games and promotions. That's like they expect to be a part of that process of the development of a brand ongoing. But I also wanted to leave you finally with this idea of the Marty McFly effect. And for you to sort of, in your lives, in your work, start looking for sort of human truths that exist in all that we do. It doesn't matter whether it's a new app that you're developing or some new content or a new way of getting that content out. At the end of the day, as Alexander mentioned, it's only going to be successful if it speaks to those human truths. And those human truths are incredibly important to young Canadians today. I would say more than ever. It's jaw-dropping how interested they are in real connections, real change. And I'll leave you with that.